recording.
And we are The Nonprofits, a show where we discuss current events and social issues from a skeptical, humanist perspective. Hello, all you wonderful people in YouTube land. The Nonprofits is a product of the ACA, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the separation of religion and government and promoting positive atheism. You can support us at patreon.com/the nonprofits. Also, if you already use Amazon, you can also support us using Amazon Smile. Tell us what you like and what you don't like in the comments, or email us at nonprofits@atheist-community.org. You can also find us on our Facebook fan group or on our Discord at tiny.cc/ACA Discord. Like, subscribe, and ring that pucking bell to get notifications of our latest videos. Well, it's time to play the music and it's time to light the lights. It's time to meet the nonprofits on the Nonprofits show tonight.
It is.
It is. Hi, Malty. It's been a long time.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm finally out of the doghouse, so I can start doing shows again. No,
Good.
I'm just kidding. Just took a little bit of a break, but it's great to be back on the throne. What have you been up to?
I have been searching the internets far and wide for great articles to do on the nonprofits, and hanging out on the Discord, doing the Q&A stuff after shows. Yeah, getting ready for spring.
And I got to say this because nonprofits. This is all not completely scripted, but we plan ahead what we want to talk about. And for every one article that you see us talk about, Malty has posted about 4 of them on this one Discord thread that we have for our crew. Articles that have not yet seen the light of day, but it's so fantastic to have this huge log of information that we can pull from. Thank you, Malty, for putting that all together for us all the time.
I'm culling from other people's cullings, so yeah.
But we have a special guest today. We have a special guest. Laura, tell us a little bit about yourself and where we can find you.
Hi, Puck. Thank you. Yes, so my biggest project right now is Unapologetically Me, which you can find on YouTube. But I also just started a podcast with 2 other content creators called The Skeptic Hangout. And that is on both YouTube and on whatever your favorite podcatcher is. So that's been really exciting. And yeah, other than that, I've just been helping out with screening for the ACA and having a good time with you guys.
Isn't call screening fun? I mean,
it is amazingly fun. I love talking to all the people because we get to talk to everyone, not just the people that make it on the air. So I think it's fantastic.
Call screeners will get to talk to far more people than any host ever will. And it's such a blast being part of the crew. Like, as much as I've done, this is my 12th show on ACA now, but as much as I've done, I always feel like my heart is with crew, and I will never forget where I came from. So thank you. We should give a quick mention to all the people right now who are behind the scenes making this happen. It's not just about the 3 pretty faces you see here. There are other equally pretty faces that you don't get to see who are helping us put this all together.
Yes, thank you to all of them.
Yes, and on top of that, almost all of them are here as volunteers. We're not getting paid for this. We're doing this out of our own hearts, and because this is a cause that is all very important to us.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll talk about volunteering later on, and we'll also talk about some standards of beauty that have been set upon us by some Christians, and we'll also raise some awareness about some human trafficking. But first, let's talk about a bill in Kentucky regarding interactions with a police officer. Let's see.
This is on the Kentucky House floor right now being argued.
Yes.
I believe. Yeah.
And how is the wording on this here? It's up to 3 months imprisonment for a person who accosts, insults, taunts, or challenges a law enforcement officer with offensive or derisive words, or makes gestures or other physical contact that would have a direct tendency to provoke a violent response from the perspective of a reasonable and prudent person. I kind of took my time on that because I wanted to read the actual wording. And I think it's the wording that we're going to have the biggest problem with. So, Laura, start us off. What's the big problem here?
I agree. So I think when it comes to the idea of protecting police officers or making laws that make it easier for them to uphold the peace, I'm all for it. Like, that's great. But when you have words that are so vague that now police officers can really flex even a perceived threat, um, like they can really flex muscles there that for me it's almost like a First Amendment speech issue, it's a freedom issue, it's a protection of the people issue. When I read the wording, it doesn't do enough to protect the people, but it doesn't even necessarily protect the police. Because what does it matter if a person is taunting them or calling them names versus um, being actually violent towards them? And I'm
Mm-hmm.
not saying it's right. I'm saying we could educate people. We could talk to them, and I don't even know how you would do that, but you could get the word out there to have people behave differently toward the police. I don't know what kind of initiatives they could start. But I think a law that puts you in jail is a little over the top.
Malty, where are you on this before I throw in my 5 cents?
Well, it's Kentucky, right? This is where the or in what I mean is that it the was over 75 days of protests due to the death of Breonna Taylor in Kentucky, and that was there has been uh, Louisville PD has arrested over 500 protests as of August of last year, um, because of these protests going on. And now we want to allow the cops to have, um, they called me names, so now I'm going to arrest them for what? Um, yeah, so I mean, there's definitely some anger there. There definitely has been some people who have been rioting in those areas.
So
But
okay. So the first
It,
thing that I thought of when I thought about this was that if you are being you have your luggage screened by the TSA at the airport, they, obviously they don't have the jurisdiction to make arrests themselves. They can detain and then call police officers, but they tell you, you know what? Don't even joke about having a bomb in your suitcase, right? Because
yeah,
they have to respond to that as if there was something there.
and
And
it
this
would inconvenience the people behind you in line because it would
yeah.
slow things down.
Yeah,
But we're not talking about arrests.
okay, but you see, to me, this is they're trying to find a way to put this into this the TSA rule into this framework. The police officers have a difficult enough job already. Do we really want to put them in a position where we even more make them have to decide if a person is an actual threat?
so this is where I'm really, really 50-50 about this because I'm not against the bill if you're talking about police needing additional protections. If you're talking about needing something to enforce on the people to keep the police safe, I'm not against that. So what bothers me about the bill is the vague wording. Like, what does the word offensive mean? And what does the
Yeah.
word insult mean?
Right.
Even when it says challenges, somebody challenges a police officer. Well, if you're already riled up and they're saying, "Hey, get off the street," and you're like, "Hey, f you, officer," would that be considered a challenge, right? Even if they're moving off the street as they say it, or doing what the officer says. So for me,
Please,
it's way too vague.
please define what the perspective of a reasonable and prudent person is for me, please. That's in the wording. But the thing is, if you say, you don't want to make a police officer have to determine if you're a threat, I am really, really hoping that police officers have training to determine whether or not someone is an authentic threat. These are people that carry firearms. So this should be part of their training to understand and see the signs of when someone is an actual threat.
Absolutely. And that's why I said earlier, the whole idea of getting initiatives out there of educating people, like, hey, this is how you can present yourself in ways that are less intimidating. And that's not a bad idea, having those sort
Yeah,
of community
yeah.
initiatives, but that has nothing to do with like having a law that now they're punishable by, right?
hmm
So in my
Well, what
opinion,
what I would hate to see is, say, if there are people that are locked arms or are coming up against a police barricade,
mhm.
and someone gets pushed, or someone reaches out to steady themselves? Or is there anything that could happen that if you are reaching towards an officer, that now that can be considered escalation that is deemed a response that's worthy of imprisonment?
Yeah.
See,
What?
this is when I wish we had a lawyer on, because that wording right there, what was it? From the perspective of a reasonable and prudent person. I
Yeah.
believe that's the same standard for the difference between artistic nudity and obscenity and pornography, right? It's one of those things. It's hard to describe, but quote unquote, you know it when you see it,
And it
right?
is subjective, and there are
Yeah.
those times where the lines are blurred. Like there's the clearly on this side, and then there's the clearly on that side. But what we're talking about is when it's blurred, is those times in between where you're just not sure.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and this bill does word it rather poorly, where we can say that there are clearly some things which are direct threats. Like, I'm going to jump over this fence and beat you up. Okay, that sounds a little bit more of a credible threat than just, as Malty was saying, I was just pushed and I had to steady myself and I just happened to reach my arms out and it looked like it was, something like that. Is that what you're saying, Malty? I'm getting the forehead wrinkle here.
Um, saying something and doing something, I definitely take at two different levels of action. Well, one is an action, the other one is a statement. So I jumping, if you reach towards somebody, then you're versus yelling at someone. I don't see how those are. How do you compare those two? I just, it's hard for me.
Well, this is a different can of worms, and Laura, help me out with this also, because we can all agree that being bullied, being insulted, being demeaned hurts, right? I mean, there is an actual effect there, and yeah, I can understand just because someone is demeaning you doesn't mean you have right to open fire. I can back that up, but what are we doing for officers who have to deal with this? Like, what kind of support can we offer them having to deal with this, a situation which we can all agree is we wouldn't want to be in it. I wouldn't want to go to work to be insulted all day. That would be really hard on me to do that job every day,
So
right?
I
We
have
can't do nothing for people who are being insulted and being belittled and being, being scorned. It's certainly not a right thing to do, and it's certainly not a helpful thing to do. Should we legislate it? I don't know. That's probably where it crosses the line. But we
yeah,
shouldn't do nothing and just say, you know what? Being insulted is part of your job. And if you can't handle it, you don't belong out there.
I actually disagree and think it's a little bit of both. I think there
Okay.
is a degree where you have to actually say, yes, being insulted is part of your job. There needs to be training, there needs to be sort of a desensitization to that. Like being in the military, you go through 6 weeks of boot camp for a reason, right? To sort of get you to get that sort of like hard skin on you and to get you to be able to be in these situations. And I assume that it's the same with police training. And if it's not, it should be. So there's a degree to which, yes, we should be training people to be more resilient towards that and telling them, yes, you should expect it. But at the same time, what can be done to minimize that? And I don't think that putting someone in jail for throwing an insult around is the right answer. And I'm not sure that I have what the right answer is. Um, but I think that is a way of taking it just a step too far.
Mm-hmm. And it's the reason that these laws are being debated currently is because of all the protests and the violence that has gone on over the past year, over the past summer. And there is legitimate problems that need to be addressed. And those problems, um, if there was nothing bad to say, then you think there'd be people saying bad things. I'm wondering, these taunting and insults have come about. I don't know that taunting and insults have come about. Is that what we're seeing? Can you give me of when this has been happening in Kentucky specifically that would warrant this type of change in their laws? I just don't know Kentucky.
Yeah,
So
Kentucky's like 10 miles that way, and I don't know Kentucky that well. But yeah, I think I see what you're trying to say. Like, has this been going on so long that we actually need to draw a line? I don't know the answer. Laura, I cut you off a little bit. Sorry. What were you
no,
gonna say?
I was going to say something very similar, but I was going to say
Mhm.
that Malty brings up a good point, and that is where is the data on this? Because you do have to assume at some point that if bills are being pushed in legislation, that there is some sort of data to back it up. And I'm just giving the benefit of the doubt here that there is some out there. But A, what is the data? And then B, what else can be done because of it? So if it's
Mhm.
becoming such a huge problem that police officers now are unsafe or afraid to go to their jobs, then certainly something should be done to address that. But what specifically is the problem, and how can that be specifically worded into a bill that addresses the actual root of the problem and not just throws this huge net out there to kind of like, oh, let's just throw something out there that covers every possible scenario that could possibly happen. That way, no matter what, we're covered.
Yeah, and part
Yeah.
of it has to be trying to deal with the liability on this, saying, did you do these actions? Well, then this is the right consequence for it. I don't know how often it happens. I couldn't tell you. I mean, I've been pulled over, for traffic violations as much as the next person, and I mean, I was always taught, keep your hands on the steering wheel 10 and 2 until the officer tells you to do something, and then when they do, they say, okay, to get to my license, I just need to reach into my wallet pocket. It's in my coat, and you describe what you're doing before you do it. Like, to me, this is just, they have to look at me and wonder where my hands are going. And if I tell them and then act predictably, cool. So my interactions have always been mild. I can imagine someone who is more scared may not necessarily have that presence of mind and remember to do all this stuff, and may act in a hasty way, not intending to seem like they're a threat, but coming across as one. And now, having a law worded like this just opens up that door for that officer to say, I felt provoked or something. Like,
Threatened.
so yeah, so I see where you guys are coming from. I do. But how do we word it better? I mean, let's play armchair legislator here. We don't like the wording. What could be done better, or should it just be left alone?
Well, so that's where all the information and data that we're missing really comes in, because what specifically are they responding to? Are they responding to incidents where officers are actually accosted? Are they responding to incidents where the person who's insulting the officer is literally like 2 inches away from their face? Um, I think without that kind of information, it's going to really be hard to determine how exactly um, that should be worded. But I think you also bring up another good point, Puck, when you talk about the being pulled over and you're taught like, hey, 10 and 2 and be polite and say yes, sir, and never argue with them,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. Um, the people in these riots and these protests and stuff, they're angry. They're not in their right minds, right? So my first
Sometimes.
question, well, I mean, I'm assuming
Yeah.
the ones that the police officers are talking about, right? The ones that they're trying to legislate against. I'm,
No, I
I'm
mean,
assuming are,
if I'm looking at, I think there have been a few people that have been throwing rocks. There are some
Mhm.
people there was some shootings in Louisville
Yeah.
during these protests, and these were between individuals, not against the police.
Mhm.
There was 2 officers that were killed during one of the protests. But again, this is, what did I say? 500 people in 75 days since the end of summer of last year. Um, but for most parts, I would say these protests are mostly peaceful.
Yeah.
They've been
Yeah.
trying to be peaceful. And, sometimes rioting has broken out.
And there's so many
So
more protests that
yeah, go ahead. I'm
there
sorry, Puck.
there are protests that happen that you never hear about because no major incident happens at them, right?
Right.
Like here in
Right.
Cincinnati, there was your fair share of protests during the relevant times. You didn't hear about them because nothing happened that would cause nationwide attention. The
Mhm.
protesters did what they were supposed to do. The people who were there to keep the peace did what they were supposed to do, and there was no major incident involved. It's only those few really escalated ones that we tend to focus on, which now looking at it leads to that question: does this happen often enough that we really need to have a bill for it? So,
I think that
Or what else?
yeah.
the bill is designed to protect police officers. Senator David Carroll is a retired police officer, and he was the sponsor of the bill. And when ABC News reached out to him to get his take on why he put this bill towards the legislature. He did not respond. And then after they put the article that we have linked in the notes, what was his quote? After looking at your headline, I don't think I have anything to say to you. I miss the time when we actually had unbiased journalism.
Oh.
Yeah, so there's his chance to kind of clarify something and maybe bridge some gaps, and he chose not to take it. And
Yep.
that was another thing that another problem that I had with this specific article wasn't just that the wording is bad per se for how it could affect people, but also how it is for causing more division, right? So you have these people that are pro bill and people who are anti bill, and you have the journalists and the legislatures, and there's this huge divide over wording and semantics. And so my whole thing with this whole article was how can we get to be more precise with our language, right? Just so that, I mean, it's ridiculous. Like, we don't like the bill because it says offensive and insult, right? Well, he doesn't like the journal because it says, that the bill, like the way that the journal, I'm gonna get the headline pulled up really quick, but it says, um, Kentucky Kentucky law would make it a crime to insult a police officer, right? So the wording of the bill then is, or the wording of the article is offensive. And my whole thing is, how does this help? How does this bridge gaps? How does this fix the problems? How does this protect people? How does it protect police officers? When the big problem is, I don't like the way you say this and I don't like the way you say that, right? Like, we can't get anywhere.
Yeah, I have no idea how this title could be considered to be slanted, and a
Right.
biased journalism. Yeah,
Right. I mean,
it's true to the point.
the word insult is in the bill.
Yeah, but at the same time, I can see how it only kind of sort of covers part, because it's not talking mostly about the insulting. It's trying to make a law delineating at what point it is escalated to the point where they should be arrested. And I get it; it's done poorly, right? And insult is one of the things, but it's only part of the things because they leave out provoking or threatening.
Yeah.
So, and I think we can agree that threatening is probably something that a reasonable officer would want to act on if
And
they're violent threatened directly to them.
And that's something we can
Yeah.
define. We can define
Yeah.
what a threat is. How do you define what an insult is? Because that depends on the individual.
Yeah, and provoke is a tough one too. So,
Yeah.
So one of my questions was, should there be any penalty for provoking?
See, that's where it needs a little bit further, like more definition. Because I would say yes, if I'm provoking someone to do something to me, and then I get them to the point where they break, I do bear some responsibility, even though they fully bear responsibility for their actions. I bear responsibility for mine as well. But then the question becomes, what do you consider provoking, right? Like, if I just throw out a slur that they find insulting, is that enough to provoke them, right? And that really honestly needs to be more clearly defined.
Yeah, like if you've been around kids for any length of time, you probably get the "I'm not touching you, I'm not touching you." I see
Or
you can't
if
be
I
mad
do
because
that.
I'm not touching you. So
or
I
if
mean,
you're in a protest line and
Yeah.
you're locked arms and
Oh,
you're
yeah.
singing a song, or you're chanting a slogan, is that provocation?
Right.
Okay. Yeah. No, I mean, there's a lot that we can talk about here. And certainly we are going to leave a lot on the clips, but we got some other articles to talk about. And Malty, this next one here is this one goes really deep, and I'm glad that we're getting a chance to talk about this.
Yes.
Yeah. So the next article you're talking about this article from the BBC.com. Abducted and shackled and forced to marry at 12 is the title of the article. And again, a link will be in the description and the show notes below. Up to 1,000 Christians, Hindus, and Sikhs girls are abducted in Pakistan every year, and they're forced to convert to Islam so they can be married. How nice after being abducted. So yeah, I mean, it was a hard read. It was a personal. It was a what's the word? The article itself chronicled a few different people, but we're talking about the issue in general, while looking at these specific girls in particular to give a human face to it, ones that had been trafficked. And the thing that really bothered me about it was that, well, other than it's just horrid, um, is that these people are being trafficked, these children are being trafficked within their own community, it seems like. When these girls are found and they are rescued from their abductors, their families or themselves are in fear for their lives or being taunted because they've been rescued. Um, it's was saying in the article. So that leads me to feel like that these are cultures that are living in one amongst each other, but don't really see each other as people, or don't see, well, see women, girls as people. Yeah.
There is like so much wrong in this situation. I'm finding it difficult to find a place to start. Like the idea that girls that young are being forced into these situations, and that there is even a demand for that, is a little troubling. Like
Pakistan had a tradition of being able to marry. I think they were trying to change the laws to bring it up to like 16 or something, but I don't know if that has actually happened.
Up to 16.
Yeah, it said
Okay.
it said up to 16, and if they were Muslim, but if they weren't Muslim, they
Right.
could take them younger. And yeah, that was really distressing. But Malty, what you said about the whole being in the communities and being a community problem, the family from the article, the family knew the abductors and they just couldn't do anything about it because if they tried, they would be harmed or their daughter would be harmed. They knew exactly where she was being held. They couldn't do anything about it. They went to
Mm-hmm.
the police, and according to the article, the police didn't even file initial report for what, like months. It took them a long time to get that initial report even filed. Um, so when you mention like the dehumanization, like do the police even consider them people? Right? Like it's not clear to me that they're even treated as human beings if there's
No,
not an
yeah,
immediate action.
because they're Christian, they're Sikh, they're Hindu,
Right.
they're not Muslim. Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Ugh.
yeah.
And it, thank goodness that we do have systems going on, international ones even, that react to situations like this. At the very worst, call attention to them and try to give them a little bit of assistance while they can. Now there were the stories that they talked about in the article. A couple of them had what could possibly be called a happy ending, but those were the ones in the article. There are thousands more that are probably still just as bad off in these situations that we don't even know
Oh
about.
That
yeah,
aren't rescued.
Yeah.
Yeah.
oh yeah, oh yeah, oh
Yeah.
yeah.
And doing research for this article, like if you just Google, I Googled abduction and then forced marriage, and it came up with dozens of articles, and many of them were from Pakistan. And granted, now these are over years, right? Some of them were older articles, but that's almost even worse. The fact that this has been going on for so long and it is known and it is being reported on, but it's just not being brought enough people's attention that anything's being done about it.
That's part of their culture.
Yeah, and that's what my guess was, that for in some cases it might be so ingrained in the culture that you pick your bride and there's really not much that anybody can do about it, and they see it as an intrusion of, we'll just to throw a phrase out there, Western culture is coming in here and screwing up the way we want to live our lives. Can't they just leave us alone? But I'm glad that these people get the information and saying, you know what, this is not a proper way to conduct one's life. You should not be forced into a marriage at this age, and it's nice to be able to see elsewhere in the world where it's like, no, it doesn't have to be like this. This is not, because there are a number of people who are in insular societies, not because they want to be, but because they don't realize there's other options. Right? They just,
Right.
to them, this is what life is. At this age, this is what happens. I am taken and converted to Islam, and I am married off to somebody, and they don't know any better.
Well, so then
So,
go
yeah.
ahead.
Go, please.
Okay. Well, so I have sort of a question for both of you to think about, kind of throwing it out there. But this is something that we think of as being not like we don't think about it because it's not right in front of our faces, right? Oh, that happens in Pakistan. Oh, they're backwards. Oh, that's their country. That's their culture. That's how they do things. So my question is that even acceptable? Like knowing about this and knowing that other nations know about it, knowing that it's being reported on, like the reporters know about it, journalists know about it. So, what is our responsibility to another human being in a different country to stop that from happening rather than just saying, "Oh, well that's their culture, that's their problem," or "Oh, well, we need to fix their government." Like what do you guys think should be done on a global level when crap like this is happening and worse is happening in these countries that have these sort of customs that we see as being barbaric?
My answer is probably very different from Malty. So Malty, you go
Oh,
first.
good.
Okay. I have no idea what you're going to
Oh.
say. Maybe we're on the same idea. Doesn't matter. I was going to say this isn't happening in different countries. This isn't happening other parts of the world. This is happening down the street from you.
It is, yeah. But so what
This
can be
is
done about it?
so. I mean, so just it's estimated so like that. I mean, it's big money, and any place where um, people can be their people's freedoms can be taken away to have someone else make a profit, and that is allowed to happen. Um, it is going to happen. It seems like. So when I was trying to look back and try to find some supplementary stuff for this article, I came across a report from the banking industry um, that was talking about how they don't want to be a part of this. And they know that this is very, very big business. And some of this money that's being generated, I mean, the profits from human trafficking are estimated globally at 150 billion a year. And a lot of it is flowing to the U.S. financial system. That's what this report was saying.
Wow.
Uh, so what do you want to do with? How do you get away from it? Is when you see that type of legislation that decreases the value of the person over profit. I think in general, or the dehumanization of people. Um, that's just overall a good thing to fight against. There needs to be social safety nets, so people don't find themselves falling through those cracks. Um, there, we need to be able to pull people away from areas of armed conflict,
Mhm.
because that's where, if you have people that are flowing from areas of either a conflict or they're having to move because of famine or something, these are people that are ripe for abuse. So identify the people that would be targeted for this abuse and try to support them. I would say would be one good way of doing it.
Yeah, and it seems to me like in the case of this article, like these people have been identified. And it seems like because it's a Pakistan problem, there's not anything that anyone outside of Pakistan can do about it. And I disagree with that, but it's kind of like the feeling I get. It's like, oh, that's over there. That's their problem. Right. So,
Hmm.
yes, I think when you talk about trafficking in our country, what can we do about it? Oh, there's a ton we can do about it, and we should be. And I know there's a lot of organizations that are working very diligently to cut that off. And it's a big deal. But then we have these
Yeah.
other nations and there's nobody vying for them. Or if there is, it's just not enough.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess and then my other question, I guess, to you, Multi, I'm sorry, Puck, we gotta
No, no,
get
no, no.
your
Go,
your
go, go.
but
Keep talking.
my question for what you said is like in the case of these Pakistani girls is where is the profit? Like this is not done for profit. This is done for control and dominance and like a
What do you
sort of a
mean?
because
It's
these
your
girls are
third
being
wife.
yeah, but so
They're part of your of they
so they
are
see it
your
as well.
workforce.
They see it as
They're,
okay. I
yeah,
can that's where my question was like, but
yeah,
they're not generating income, like generating dollars, but you're right in the sense that
sure.
they're generating like the perception of wealth or the perception of prestige.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that answers my
Well,
question.
Yeah.
yeah, or yeah, I think that also that it may be partially that is part of the culture of how a bride is obtained. Um,
I think also like,
Sorry.
this is true, Monty. I did come up with very different answers from you. Like one of them, like to the answer that what can I do for across the world is show my life in a very public way and normalize it as much as possible. Like, back in the old days, when I was growing up, you looked at TV and you said, oh, look at these normal families. This is what a normal life must be like. We don't have that anymore. Now we have YouTube. Now we have TikTok. We can show what a normal life is. Just this is how I live my day to day, and this is what is normal for us. And they can see how other people live their lives. And maybe it's not going to get directly to the ones in Pakistan, but maybe it's going to get to someone who lives close, and it's going to start to spread, and the awareness is going to spread. Hey, being kidnapped at 12 is not normal. Look, that didn't happen to any of these people. Why should it be happening to me? And eventually it's going to get to someone next to Pakistan, which I feel horrible because I just realized I can't find Pakistan on a map. But it's going to get close, and they're going to say, you know what? I know of a society one country over that thinks that it's okay to adopt 12-year-old girls. But here I see everywhere else in the world, this is not okay. And someone closer might be able to do something about that. And failing that, one thing that we can do here with our local legislature is to open up asylum laws a little bit more and make it grease the wheels a little bit to make it a little bit easier for someone who is in a horrible situation and needs out of there to be able to find some security far enough away that it's safe from where they are. And with the proper resources and with the proper counseling and with the proper community to help them, you're never going to get over it, right? There's no way you can say just get over what happened in your past, but to help them acclimate and to help them get used to life on their own. And that's how I see me being able to help across the way. But then Malty brings up another excellent point that it's not that far away; it's happening everywhere. And
it's migrant workers, it's sexual workers, it's whether they be legal or non. It's any place where there are not the safety nets that protect people from abuse.
So here's an example that's actually closer than you think. And in my case, it happened about a mile that way. Okay. The mall in this area used to sell out little kiosks, not a full store, but like the little stands in the middle of the mall that sell like whatever trinkets and whatnot.
Right.
And this one company had bought a number of those in the mall, and they were staffed by people who were from other countries who were brought in here to work there. But there was about 6 or 7 of them that had to share a 2-bedroom apartment. And they didn't get paid for that the way that we would expect to, because it was a work program. And since it was such a small company, nobody really did any background checks on them to make sure they were getting paid the way they're supposed to. They were given nice looking clothes, and they were given makeup and hairstyling so that they looked very presentable. This is trafficking too.
But then they have nothing.
Right?
Yeah.
This is trafficking too. We don't think about it that way because there are a lot worse things that happen, but this happens everywhere and a lot closer than you think. And thank goodness there are a lot of organizations, and there will be a link in the down there part for some places that you can go if you suspect that something is happening. And there's a number of things that signs that you can look for, because the signs of being trafficked and the signs of being abused, there's a lot of overlap there. There's a lot of overlap, and the links in the description will show you some signs that you can look for to see if there is trafficking going on in your communities.
Yeah.
It never ever hurts to say something, even if you're wrong. Right? Yeah. It never hurts to try and say something. It's interesting that you bring that up, because I Googled human trafficking while I was researching these articles, and me being in Nevada, we have like the highest per capita of human trafficking. And now the numbers per state were low. It was something like 230 something per year, which is already atrocious. And that was low compared to some other states, but it was the highest per capita. It was like 7 point something per 100,000 people. Whereas I think the next highest was like 4 or 5. And so that's right in my neighborhood. Like I live right nearby Reno. I'm like just an hour away from Reno. And it's really bad in Reno.
The stigma that is associated with sex work. And is there much agriculture in Nevada?
A lot.
I know So
the area I live in is entirely agricultural. Yeah.
Yep. So it's migrant workers. There you go. Those
And
are two major areas where that happens.
the one story about this that hit closest to home, but in a kind of this is a kind of a happy story about this. I had a family member who's been rather transient in the past year, moving from state to state, job to job, who recently came down with COVID. And during their assessment, taking the history, found out that she had been moving so much from so many different states and living in hotel room to hotel room. And they actually asked her, "Are you being trafficked? Are you safe right now?" And it was good that they asked that, because that's one of the signs, wandering around, no permanent residence, not having a consistent place to stay. It's really nice to see that the hospital staff is on this and that they know some of the signs to look for. And like, this is one of those cases where it was not true. My relative is fine and was not being trafficked, but it's good, Laura, you were pointing out that it's happens closer than you think. And it's good that these that people are looking out and know some of the questions to ask. Healthcare is a great place. Real estate is another one. If you rent out apartments, you're very prone to being one of the first people to be able to notice things. I'm glad that we were able to touch on this, and I'm glad also that we were able to find some way that. Thank you, Laura, for bringing that up. What can we do about a situation that seems so far away? What are your final thoughts on this, you guys?
So I don't know. My final thoughts are that, like, the one thing we didn't touch on that I was thinking strongly about was the religious ties. And my final thought is just that the more that we can defeat that religious teaching that tells you that it's okay to control another person, or it's okay to do this based on another person's religion or anything, and it's not even necessarily just religion, ideology, because it could be a political ideology. The more that we fight back against those ideologies, the less room that these bad ideas have to exist. And so that was the big takeaway that I got from this article that we hardly even touched on.
Yeah.
I completely forgot about that. It's like, what do you do when an entire region is, believes not just that this is okay, but there is religious mandate saying that this is what you're supposed to do? How do you begin to fight against that? I was so pucked off at this situation. I forgot there was a religious aspect, and that part of what the ACA does is fight against oppressive religious and religion and government. So I that was a huge blind spot. Thanks for calling attention to that.
But what we talked about was important too.
Yeah.
All due to British imperialism. Yeah. No, I'm serious. That's the only reason that Pakistan is even there, right? So.
Yep.
That's the whole study that I got to do. Because I read a little bit about this and never followed up, that one of the biggest reasons of problems in Africa is because it was settled and colonized with no regard at all to the local culture that was there. Yeah,
that's like a whole nother rabbit hole to go down, but it's a really interesting one. That a lot of these countries, I mean, it sounds terrible, but a lot of the countries in the states that they're in now is because of the imperialism and the impact that we had on them expanding.
Yeah. Colonialism. And,
thank you. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, and the indoctrination of the indigenous populations with whatever form, whether it be Judaism or either Islam or Catholicism. Whether it be French or Spanish,
Yeah, I'm Filipino. Do you want to tell Filipinos about colonial indoctrination?
No, I mean,
No, that's your trivia for the day. In Southeast Asia, just about every country there is Buddhist or Hindu, except for the Philippines, which is that one little Christian chunk down there, and that is all because of colonization. So there's your trivia. I certainly encourage you guys to look that up a little bit more. I mean, come on, it's called the Philippines. It's named after King Philip, right? So definitely look that up. But well, that was really cringy. Let's keep it cringy.
Why not? We're already there. Let's.
Right, and this one is super close to home. Laura, what are we doing here?
Let me take this one away. Yeah.
I can't even.
The name of the article is Missouri Pastor on Leave After Telling Wives to Lose Weight, Strive to Look Like Melania Trump. Okay, the interesting thing about this, this article goes over a pastor who encourages women to look and behave a certain way for their husbands, including being sexually available to them. And I got all fired up because I literally, I've just been battling this and I just did a video on it. And so I was it was a perfect timing for me to be on this specific show. So I'm going to give you guys an earful.
Please, that's yeah.
So one thing. So this guy's on leave now. The church, the First General Baptist Church has issued an apology and all that stuff. But the Twitter tweet that outed him, that got him in trouble, the woman says that he has been doing this over multiple sermons. It's not just the one sermon where oops, he got caught, but that he's even made statements about marital rape being okay, that there's no such thing as marital rape, because a woman is there to give herself to the husband. That's her duty, that's her job. So so this article goes into detail about some of the different stuff that he has said, and I just want to read one of them because it's really bad. But he says, "Now look, I'm not saying that every woman can be the epic trophy wife of all time like Melania Trump," he said. "All I can say is not everybody looks like that, amen, but you don't need to look like a butch either." Right? So this is the kind of stuff that he's espousing and that others are espousing. And if you think it's just him, I did a video on a completely different person. Mine was on a different, and she was a woman, and she's espousing this stuff. So it might not be the most popular Christian teaching, but it is still out there and it is still rampant. And it's often enough that it comes up time and again in both social media and in the news. So it just floors me that that belief is still out there.
Now, here on Nonprofits, we encourage proper scholarship, and we don't want you to just take our word for it. That's why we link to the articles and the things that we talk about. We are not going to be playing any of the 22-minute sermon, but we do strongly encourage you, should you have the stomach, to investigate this for yourself, to see what we're talking about, and make sure that we're representing them
and not take anything out of
fairly,
context.
yeah. Because I watched it because I have the stomach for this kind of stuff, not really, and it is incredibly cringy watching the smarmy way that this guy was on stage saying all this stuff. Bad enough he's saying it, his body language and his tone just added an extra level of like gut-wrenching cringe to it. Don't take my word for it. Definitely watch it. And then we'll look at the retraction statement, which, wow, that's its own debacle. So
yeah.
what
Now, so Puck, I have a question for
Yeah.
you, right? If if the woman who had posted this on Twitter that went viral hadn't have posted it on Twitter and it hadn't gone viral, do you think he'd still be preaching there to this day, the same messages?
Yeah. And I think one of the reasons that it did go out is because, like I tried talking about it earlier, people are starting to realize, hey, this isn't necessarily the norm. This isn't the way I should be. It's like, I don't have to live this way. I don't have to live, like there are a lot of other people out there living very normal, healthy lives who are not making themselves out to be trophy wives. And they realize, they watch something like this and they say, wait a second, this isn't right. And finally, someone, after how many years was this guy preaching like this? Finally, someone decided to post it, and now we have problems. But what gets to me is not the one that they found that's causing problems, but how many more are out there that we haven't heard about yet, and that haven't gone viral yet.
Yep. Or that aren't on leave because they didn't happen to get their stuff put up on the internet.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And they're still out there, and they're still, spreading their message. And what a terrible message too. It's like, and like, as you pointed out, Laura, it's coming from both men and women. There are women out here who are encouraging other women to have this availability lifestyle and trophy wife lifestyle.
Oh yeah.
Which I suppose, if that is truly what one wants to do with their life, who am I to tell them not to? But it's got to be them wanting it, and not them feeling like it's a societal norm or a pressure, or heaven forbid, a divine edict that this is the way that you're supposed to live your life.
So that is the issue that I have with this. It's not, like if you're in a healthy relationship and you make some sort of compromise or a decision or a gesture for your spouse that you want to do, like that's not even a problem for me. But when you start making it an obligation, when you attach shame to it for not doing it, or when you make it a sin not to do it, then that's when it becomes, to me, like it becomes abusive. Like not even just problematic, it's flat out abusive.
Malty, we've kind of shut you out of this one.
Sorry,
No, I feel bad about this.
No, not at all.
Laura and I have been having this conversation since Friday. Okay.
I'm trying to dig into what the heck a General Baptist is.
Okay.
This was the Ministries of the General Baptists of Carolinas. One of the Carolinas, I believe, was the church he was at. Oh, that this was going on.
Missouri.
Missouri. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I'm just trying to find out who these people are, what their general tenets are, what schism actually got them from the
From all the
what's
other Baptists.
all the other Baptists. If it's not the general, it's the specific. I don't know. But no, that they're supposed to be generalists. And I'm just trying to find out who these people are. I dove a little bit into their websites, and it is very interesting. I'm looking at this Reconstruction Task Force, and it seems like the General Baptists are restructuring, at least the ones that I'm looking at here, are structuring their church affiliations as a corporation. It's about raising money for the greater good of God.
Of
Of
course,
course.
of
Amen.
course.
Yeah. But yeah, there's some really interesting things. They have a general fund or an investment fund that they will lend out to other churches at a competitive rate. They also own a college and a publishing house. So, yeah, this seems like a little bit of a. It just is strange to me the amount of effort, the amount of diligence that people put into this money making scheme of teaching people an indoctrination, teaching them and teaching them very, very strange things, but indoctrination, maybe I should just leave it at that.
See, this is why I like doing nonprofits with you, Malty, because I tend to look at an article and I look at the subject of it and I say, well, how does this relate to my daily life and the things that I'm interested in? You, on the other hand, and I love this, you're going to dig deep into the subject material and you're going to see, well, let's find out what exactly Greater Baptist is. And you're going to come up with all sorts of wonderful material for us. And it's interesting how deep you go. I
Some
love
of
it.
this stuff is just scary. Yeah, I mean, they've rolled. They've found that the women's ministry has actually been rolled into the ministry of institutional ministries, which is that's the one that actually makes money. That's the one that the institutional ministry says has the General Baptist Fund, the Oklahoma City University, Stinson Press are all part of the institutional ministries that make money for the church.
So any ministry that gets big enough gets rolled into the institutional ministries and then starts producing income for the church.
Well, I think it's a different differentiation of what each part is supposed to do. These
Yeah.
organizations are there to make money for the church,
Right.
whereas I think the churches themselves are more for indoctrination, servicing the needs of their congregation. Excuse me.
So here's another blind spot for me, and maybe you guys can help me out a little, because I left church and religion really around before the time when they would be thinking about teaching me how to have a proper marriage in the first place. Right, I left just after high school, or just before, or just after I finished high school. Right, so back then the only real relationship message I ever got from the church was never have sex ever. You're dirty for even wanting to, which is problematic on its own. We'll save that for another episode. But I never got into the classes of how to conduct yourself properly in a marriage. So this is a blind spot for me. Maybe you guys can shed some light on this. What, if anything, what did you guys get from your church or from your religion as far as how you're supposed to conduct a relationship? Like personal experience time here.
Okay, so that is probably the reason why this fired me up so much is because I got exactly that indoctrination, but it was so much more subtle. So I did go to a Baptist church, but it was a Nevada Baptist church. I don't know what that means. I don't know how it relates to Southern Baptists or General Baptists, but But I did get the message, and it was subtle. It was more like, oh, women, this is a service you should want to provide. You should be happy with it. God created your relationship to be this way for a reason. And so he created you for this role. And it was never like that blunt where he was like, don't be butch. Right. Um, but
Oh, he
I,
actually says that. Don't be.
oh,
Bush.
he does. Yeah.
Watch the video,
I have
people.
a counter
Watch it.
message for that, by the
Yeah.
way, later. But no, my religious indoctrination was definitely along the lines of you are a bad wife if you cannot provide for your husband. And that did translate into my relationship. And my husband never put that on me. Like, he's always been respectful of me, and he's always been, hey, we're equals and stuff like that. But the way that it was internalized to me definitely impacted what I brought to the table in the relationship. So Malty,
Mhm.
you can take it. What about you?
Yeah, no, I was not raised religious, so I kind of dodged that bullet. But there definitely was some, general roles that were expected. I think are expected in just when I was growing up, at least, of how you should behave. What when it's time to be in a relationship, when if you're, you know. Um, middle aged and not in relationships, then that's looked at oddly. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, so yeah, I didn't see any of that. I saw it in family members, and in one relationship in particular, I think it um, there's a there's a division of labor. There's a working together. Um, in other relationships, it was abusive. So I think it has to do with people, and and you can use religion to justify anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, when you're looking at Baptists in particular, I think they've had a problem in the past. Like 1995, they apologized for their past offense of slavery. Hence the
Wait, wait,
Southern
wait, wait, wait. I'm
Baptists
sorry.
having
Did you
their
say 1995?
1995, they
Can
That's when they
apologized
officially apologized for
for their
slavery.
past defense of
now
slavery.
I'm like not the best historian, but isn't this about 100 years
Oh, it
after
gets
the
better.
Civil?
Yeah.
Oh
It
my
takes
goodness.
some people a long time to be apologetic.
2017,
Ugh.
white supremacy is not good anymore. We we
Oh,
we, sh- we should
2017.
we should denounce white supremacy in 2017,
Maybe.
um, and then in 2019, after the Me Too movement had gone on, the Southern Baptist Convention focused on the problem of sexual abuse in the church.
Well, at least they didn't wait
Um,
100 years on that one. So
yeah,
steps in the right direction there.
um, yeah. So even though e- I hope that there's steps in the right direction. Yes, and it's not just mouth service,
Yeah.
lip service. Excuse
So
me.
Malty brings up a really good point. Like, we haven't talked about the retraction, but their retraction was pretty pathetic and a little bit weak.
Hmm.
And so, do you guys mind if I touch on that really quick?
Drop all the
Please,
Okay.
please go
cringe. Go
ahead.
ahead.
Okay, so in their retraction, they apologized on his behalf. Like, he doesn't represent what we really believe. And they did all the normal distancing themselves from him. But what they apologized for and said was, women, you should feel beautiful no matter what, you're created in Jesus's image. So they apologized for him. I think it was maybe more for the butch comment or whatever, or make yourselves look pretty. But they didn't even touch on the marital obligation or the sex or women, you should not have to ever feel obligated to give your body to another person. That was nowhere in the retraction. The only thing that they mentioned was, women, you're made in God's image. You're beautiful. Don't worry about it. And I found that to be disgustingly insufficient for the kinds of things that he was saying. Um, yeah. So, what are your guys' thoughts on that?
it does seem like they're more interested in making sure that everybody in the world knows this person does not speak for this organization rather
Right.
than attacking the problematic statements of the sermon itself. And for from an organizational standpoint, I kind of get it. Your first priority is damage control to the organization, and then tangentially damage control to the congregation. And
Yeah.
just hopefully they align sometimes. But all else fails, you got to look out for the organization before you look out for the. We can always breed more congregation. We can't breed more probably can, but you get where I'm coming from. It's like they care more about protecting the organization than they care about protecting the general population. The reason, and so like the reason I wanted to ask you guys about your histories about this and your experiences is because I don't want anybody to think that we angry atheists are merely straw manning the Christian position on marriages. Okay. We've
Yeah.
been taught this stuff. We grew up in this stuff. And it's very fascinating to watch young atheist content creators, especially ones who recently came out of their religion. The one that stands out to me is Exmo Lex. Objectively, Dan is
Oh, yeah.
no exception to this. There's many others. They're young, but they went through all of it. And they were taught how they're supposed to conduct themselves and their spouse in a marriage. Okay,
And it
listen to
personally
their
impacts
stories.
people.
Well,
Yeah.
Yes.
yeah. The idea of complementarianism is
Complimentary is, yeah, that's a word.
complementaryism.
I
There's so many so many asms on the end of that thing.
What
Anyway,
is
I
that,
think they
Malty?
made
What
it
was
up.
that?
no. It's that men and women have different but complementary roles in the church. That these are outlined in the Bible. There are women's roles and then there are men's roles. And that's where the Southern Baptists are coming from. That's where they're getting these things. That's why they're saying that you have your place to be. And I think it women have the worst of the two, but it also affects the relationship as a whole, and that the sole breadwinner is supposed to be the man, right? That the person who is supposed to protect and make decisions both financially and other is supposed to be the man, and that's not necessarily the person who is best suited in the relationship to make those decisions. It's a case by case basis, I would think.
Correct. Yeah.
Right, and it's tough on women, but as you point out, it affects men too. If a man doesn't feel like he can, he does not have the proper job to support a family, it makes him feel inferior or something. It gives an idea that you should not date a woman who makes more money than you do. Okay, which puts a negative stigma on
I know.
on self-driven women who want a career of their own, which there's nothing wrong with. If that's what they want to do, go for it.
If
Right?
there are any
Yeah.
surgeons out there that would like to date me, Malty at
Yeah. No, but I
ladies.
mean, trying to cram people into boxes that they don't want to belong in is
Right.
not going to be a good thing in the long run. And my final take on this, though, is that, you know what? I actually don't think they're far away from a good message. Because if their message said something like, just because you are now married doesn't mean you should slack off on continuing to romance and to woo your partner. You should, even though you're married, you should continue to work on not just your relationship with each other, but also continue to work on yourself, right? Go ahead and keep doing the self-improvement things you wanted to do. Keep learning if you want to. Keep working out if you want to. But continue to work on the relationship just because you're married is a wonderful idea. Go on these date nights, even if you have kids and obligations. Make it a point, say once a week or so, whatever matches your schedule, to do something just for you and your partner. Like, I think it's not very far from a good message where we're probably going to agree more than we're going to disagree. It's just they throw in a couple of statements in here that make it incredibly problematic to the point where we don't even want to listen to the rest of it. Right? When you make it an obligation, a religious obligation on top of that, and then you take away a person's choice. When you start throwing that in, it starts to be highly problematic, and that's when people like us have to step in and say, "Whoa, wait a second, let's make this video go viral." and address these issues. So I guess, thank you for making us bring it up. But second, you're not far off. You are this close. You have the right ideas. You just aren't saying them in the right ways, and you're taking them too far.
See, so I disagreed with everything you said up until you said you have the right ideas. You just are taking them too far. I think that they, like you said, they're close to the right ideas. The idea of not. Oh my God, no! There's no way of making it the right idea. No, as soon as you tell somebody, this is where Puck and I have been disagreeing all week. As soon as you tell somebody that you have to do it for the other person, no. Like if I don't look good and I want to be in sweatpants and I want to look like however I want to look, lazy, dirty, butch, whatever. Like butch isn't even a bad thing. I'm very butch, but as soon as you tell them that they can't look that way for the other person, that is where my problem is. So your message was beautiful. Like, oh, you should continue to look out for your health. You should continue to take care of yourself and improve yourself, regardless of whether or not you're in a relationship. And the two of you should continue to work on things and always try to improve things in the relationship. That's all beautiful. That is nowhere in their message. It's not. Like there is no husband and wife. It's just wife. And there is no do this for yourself. It's do it for him. And there is no provide to the other person because you love them and you want to. And if you don't want to, then that's fine. It's no, provide to them regardless of if you want to or not. Right?
Malty, you're the tiebreaker. You're the tiebreaker, that we got to move on.
But I do agree with everything you say, Puck, about relationships. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, I definitely think the Southern Baptists, whether they be general, the Baptists, whether they be general, whether they be Southern, whether they be specific, there are some problems. There's problems with their doctrine that needs to be addressed. And so when you have the Vice President of the United States, former Vice President of the United States, appearing at a Southern Baptist convention, this was in 2018, to tout the accomplishments of Donald Trump and his administration, for the preachers at a Baptist seminary church to be looking up to Donald Trump and his trophy wife is not surprising to me, at least. It sends a weird message, at least.
Well, it does talk about the whole, like, you're not supposed to be attracted to other people's wives. Like, doesn't it touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, there's
like a
that.
sin or something. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife.
Oh yeah. No, but this is a trophy. No, this isn't coveted. This is I don't.
All right. Well, let's. Sorry. All right, let's move on to our last segment here. And you guys know me by now, everybody who's watching. I like to look for progress, and I like to look not just at the bad things and the dangerous things and the sad things that happens in religion, but I also like to look at people who are taking steps in the right direction. We don't have Cynthia with us. She's not able to sing, but I do have the card to signal that this is, in fact, the Step in the Right Direction segment. And this is actually a better card than we had last time. So the Step in the Right Direction card is a step in the right direction.
Step in the right direction.
That works.
Like that?
Yes, there you go. Make sure we get that on tape. If you can make sure we get that recorded. Okay.
I hope we're recording.
Let's talk about.
Dear Lord, do we have to do this all over again?
let's look at this, and I think of this as a step in the right direction. According to an article from goodnewsnetwork.org, 52% of American surveys say they volunteered for the first time during the pandemic. Laura, rain on my parade.
No. My initial thoughts on this are that I don't care why you're volunteering. The fact that anything gets somebody volunteering is amazing to me. So you want me to rain on your parade because of the statistics in the article itself, huh?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, but we got 3 volunteers here, right?
Yeah.
Talking about how,
Yeah, I'd rather get the positive out first and then talk about how messed up. The article has issues, but the message is fantastic, which is that the pandemic has caused more people to come out and start volunteering for the first time. And I say, I don't care what your reason is for volunteering. I don't care how often. I don't care when you started. I don't care why you started. If you are out there helping your community, then more power to you. I think it's amazing. So I'm going to start with the positive message, Puck.
All right. Malty, what's your positive before we get into the problematic parts?
Well, I think there is a great thing about people pulling together in a crisis that we see happening over and over again. And I think that we're in a very unique position right now in that since we're in the technology age and can react and implement things in that in the speed that the technology aid can help with, that we can be able to communicate. We can talk. We can let people know where their skills or their labor can be most effective. So far as volunteering goes, especially in a crisis, we're in a good spot, I think, where we're at in history.
So one of the kind of weird places that I've noticed things popping up a lot more in the past year, and maybe I'm noticing this only because I'm part of it now, and so I'm more attuned to it. You know, like when your friend buys a new like I don't know Volkswagen Jetta, you start noticing Volkswagen Jettas everywhere.
Mhm.
Maybe that's what's happening to me, but I am noticing an influx of YouTube content creators, people who
Yeah.
come in, start a channel, and speak their mind and start to rally a community around them, or find a community that's already interested in what they're interested in, and they kind of band together and create something that's greater than the sum of its parts. Laura, you're part of this because
Yeah.
you started
So
just recently too, right? So
yeah, but I think COVID and the quarantine and all this really has had an impact on that. I think that you could probably find some pretty strong correlations because I wasn't on Facebook all that much before the quarantine. Like it was being stuck at home all day and the kids would finish their schoolwork or they'd be in the middle of doing their math and I would just be on my phone where normally we might go out to the park and do schoolwork or whatever. It was the quarantine that brought me onto Facebook, got me into your guys's the ACA pages and everything, got me interacting with people and got me fired up. And then I was like, yeah, I could do this. I want to be a part of it. And
Mm.
so whereas normally I would be out in my community doing something and being just as loud and obnoxious, now I'm on the internet with you guys being loud and obnoxious. So I really do think that the quarantine, it's almost like a silver lining. And it's
mhm.
crappy to say that because nobody wants bad things to be happening. But sometimes good things come out of those bad things happening. And so there's at least that.
Yeah. And like I started online activism. I'll just be flat out and say it. Yeah, because a lot of the normal activities that I had aren't available anymore. And
Exactly.
I'd been watching ACA content for years. And I started working online with Ethan Michael on Your Friendly Neighborhood Atheist. He brought me on to do a few shows, and it just kind of snowballed from there. And then here I am now doing shows for the ACA, and I'm super happy to be doing this. Malty, you've been with the organization for some time. Like, what have you noticed in the past year?
A couple years, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. There's been we've had a kind of a bump about a year ago. I think there has been maybe a decrease in the angle of increasing members. We're still gaining members, but not gaining members as fast as we were at our highest steepest rate. Um, but yeah, I think that what we have seen is we have seen a community develop that is self-sustaining and is made of a group of people who want to be there for the community, who want to provide for themselves and for others a place where they can get together and they can have community. They can play games. They can talk to people. They can get advice. They can share recipes. They can just hang out and feel like they are with people that they are comfortable with. Um, and then you can always go down to the debate channel and yell at each other for, uh,
I
you
mean, if
know,
you're into that stuff.
if you're into that stuff, there is places for civil debate.
Yes.
Don't yell at each other.
Civil
Civil.
debate. Civil debate.
Keyword.
Yeah. But I mean, and I think it is actually, one of the I looked at your article, and yes, I have to agree with Laura that 2,000 people being asked a few questions and never seeing the structure of the survey study.
Oh, here comes the skepticism. Let's hear it, guys.
Yeah,
How do I get these in here? Um,
yeah.
the it was problematic to me, but it what it did though is that's what I like about when I see the articles that are picked is it it gave me a stepping off point for me when I was looking at these other articles, like the one on crisis volunteerism, where it was a study of some forest fires in Sweden and how the volunteer organizations during that disaster were able to come together and handle it. And then
Right.
also when looking at is from what was it? I'm sorry. True. I'm sorry. Medicine. And I apologize. I'm
Oh, the
not saying.
center. You're talking about the Center for Evidence-Based Medicine.
Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
you're
Yes.
welcome.
Yeah. The article there where they're talking about volunteering may promote well-being and um, the in a little ways, but and those people that don't have community are being able to use volunteering as a way to build community capital to get to know people from
Absolutely.
all
Yeah.
over the world, from um, UPuck there, and where are you? You're in one of the W states or
Oh,
one of
he's in
the I states?
Ohio.
You're one of the I
Ohio.
states.
Ohio.
That's right.
I'm
To
next to
people
Wisconsin.
across
I
the
guess that's
world.
close enough.
Yes, I know. I mean, I've met and now I could consider myself friends with people from all over the world. Where I'd say 2 years ago that was necessarily not the case.
Right. Yeah, same here.
Yeah, I like this. Even though we have an article that seems to be happy, we're not above criticizing the point. Laura, what else did you
Well,
want
I
to go ahead?
no, I always look at things from multiple angles, right? And so
Mhm.
one of them is how do I feel about what's being said to me? Like how do I feel about the article, the meat of it? So like the 12-year-old girl being married or the pastor and his words, like how do I feel about it? But then the other thing is how is the article written and what is the veracity of the data, right? Is it accurate information or what is it really telling me? Right? And so with this article, I loved the feel good aspect of it, but because it was I mean, it's one of those small websites, I don't know what kind of articles they write other than that, but it's not one of those mainstream, it's not Fox News, and it was very poorly put together, and I got a little hung up on that, but I don't want it to take away from the feel good message that during this pandemic, more people are getting out there and volunteering, and, so yeah, my biggest write up was, "Oh, here's what I would have done differently with the article," right?
This is
But
good. No, 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 no.
I got it out of my system.
This is absolutely an important message that even if something seems to make you feel good or it seems to support your narrative,
Mhm.
it is still not above proper
Reproach.
skepticism. You
Absolutely.
go in there and you dig around and you make sure that this article is really saying what you wanted to say. Because too many people on all sides will just look at the headline and say, "Yeah, look, this generally agrees with what I want to talk about.
Mhm.
I'm going to go ahead and cite this as a source, or at the very worst, I'm going to just agree with the information that's on here that I hadn't heard before because it resonates with me in a particular way." No, everything should be given this level of scrutiny is probably the wrong word, but it
No,
seems
scrutiny is the
appropriate.
perfect word,
Okay,
actually, it's the perfect word. So
okay,
if
yeah,
if you wanna know more specifically, like, what my issues were, it was like,
yes, let's
I
hear
know
it.
Malty touched on it a little bit, but, it said a survey of 2,000 people, didn't link the survey anywhere in there. What was the demographic of these 2,000 people? Was it across the entire United States? Was it worldwide? Why only 2,000 people? When you're talking about, an entire nation, that's an incredibly small number. When you're talking about a town or a city or maybe even like a county, then that's just perfectly fine, right? And then there was no how were the questions worded? How were they able to be answered? Um, and some of them were a little bit confusing. So 52% of the respondents, from my understanding, I was really caught up on this number for a little bit. It was confusing, but I think it was 52% of the 2,000 people didn't start volunteering until COVID. And then it said later, but 7 out of 10 people in the survey didn't want to volunteer for health and safety reasons, or they were reluctant to volunteer or hesitant to volunteer. Well, so does that mean they're not volunteering, or does that mean that a certain percentage of those people are volunteering, but they're doing so hesitantly? Like, what does that question mean, and what data is that giving me? Right? Because it seems to contradict the data that, oh, half of people are volunteering now only because of COVID. One would assume then that more than half are volunteering total, right? Because there are people who volunteered before COVID. What's that number? How many people was that? So the question, the questions that came up in my head was, how does this data all correlate, and what were the actual questions, and what am I actually looking at here? Right?
Yeah, so it certainly wasn't like your more one of your more scholarly,
Absolutely not.
and certainly it does leave a little bit like my first answer to that about 70% said they wanted to volunteer but hesitated, is that they probably volunteered in a different to a different
Capacity.
extent or a different
Mhm.
capacity than they would have wanted to, but they realized, oh, I have to be at home, so there's only so much I can do. I'd
Right.
want to go out there and do more, but there's only oh goodness, who was it? Not to plug other shows on the ACA, but plug Truth Wanted. We're talking to someone who wanted to set up a street epistemology type booth at her college campus,
Oh,
but
nice.
just realized that's a horrible thing to do right now. And it is, it is, but
Timing. Yeah.
yeah, but they had called and asked, what can I do aside from that to try to encourage conversations? And so that's where that's the first thought that I had, was maybe they want to volunteer but they can't volunteer in the way that they would really want to, so they're doing something different for now. But again, the fact that I have to guess what this survey is saying is poor scholarship.
Yeah, like, what is
And
the context really is what I
yeah,
wanted. Like, give me a little bit more information so I know what it is that you're actually saying, you know?
yeah.
Mhm.
But it's good, and
Mhm.
I not to keep tooting the horns of the organization that keeps the lights on here, but I started volunteering for the ACA last, wow, I want to say August, as crew and call screener, and since then have found out that there are so many needs that this organization has, and so many ways that
Mhm.
people can volunteer their time. I mean, the people that you see on the show is just part of it, and even when you look at the crew cam at the end of some of the other shows, that is still only a small part of it. They never show the president, the board of directors on there,
Mhm.
the people at ground level who are trying to keep this organization, so that we have the capacity to do the shows that we do, and the challenges that they faced in the last year when they could not do shows from the library the way they had
Oh,
been
yeah.
doing shows, right? And how rapidly they were able to overcome all those challenges and get to look at this. We have a completely non-Texas panel here once again, which
Mhm.
would not have happened a year ago, 2 years
Right.
ago. So
Yeah.
and again, these are just the show staff. Behind that, there's volunteers who keep the communities running, to keep interaction going with the members, and so many other people who moderators, just off the top of my head, writers. There's so many things that go on behind the scenes that if you did want to volunteer, if you just email us, even if you just emailed this show,
Absolutely.
we will get your request over to the people who make such decisions. There it is right there. Nonprofits at atheist-community.org. Email that and we will get you to the right people. If you would like to volunteer for this organization, there's plenty of things you can do, even if you don't live in Texas. What about you guys? What other volunteer ideas can you come up with? Just take a couple more minutes to throw them out there. If someone really wants to help out their community, where can they start?
I don't know, but I have another shout out that I've been dying
Go,
to
go,
give
go, go,
since
go, 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 go.
you started doing the shout out to the volunteers and how wonderful they are, and they are amazing. Um, and bringing me in as a volunteer and, like, how helpful they've been and how, like, wonderful they've been getting me all used to doing everything. We have a really good group of people here. But I wanna shout out to all the audience. Like, when we had the thing going on in Texas where people didn't have power and they didn't have water and stuff like that, I mean, chats were exploding with, "Where can I send supplies?" and "Where can I send water?" and "Who can I help?" and "How can I donate?" And, and I know that in some respects, the ACA was not set up to receive things like, cases of water and stuff and distribute them. Like, we're not quite there yet, right? But finding those other avenues for those people, I thought it was just amazing seeing how our audience, whether you're currently volunteering or not, just seeing how many people are just willing to, at the drop of a hat, like, hey, what do you need? How can I help? Shout
Mhm.
out to all you people. You guys kick ass. Like, you guys are amazing. So I just wanted to throw that out there really quick.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool.
What about you,
Yeah.
Malty?
Well, thank you very much for having me search down the Center for Evidence-Based Medicine, because this is definitely going to be pinned in the front. I think this, I'm gonna find some lots more stuff that's good here. And the article that I read, there highlighted a thing that I think I just heard again and again through this conversation, is that in order for the benefit to really be felt, the people needed to understand that their volunteer was valued, that it mattered, and that they were making a difference. And I think that we are, and it does. So, yes, thank you, everybody.
Can't believe these shows always start out with that intimidating. We have to talk for how long, and then when we get to the end of it, we're like, wait a second, there's still so much that we wanted to talk about, and now time is up.
Is it?
Yeah,
That's the best kind of show.
it's time. So, Malty, what was your take on the show and with all the things we talked about today?
Oh, so what do we got? I am very interested in doing some follow-ups, definitely. The corporate structure of the General Baptist was very interested to me. Um, the um, in looking at these state bills, my local and my federal governance is definitely also something that seems to be a lot more of interest to me. And it's just looking to see what they're doing, just keeping an eye on them, just checking in. Trust but verify.
Dovrei no proverei.
I like that.
Well, oh goodness, I wish we had more time here. But Laura, one more time, just wrap everything up and give us an idea of where we can find you.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, once again, I am on Unapologetically Me on YouTube. Sorry that that's such a long word to spell. And then I'm also on Skeptic Hangout on YouTube. And I will also be on The Perspective with Ethan on April 20th. So get your ghost questions ready because we're going to have some fun.
And save some questions for me because on March 26th, I am going to be on Truth Wanted.
Ooh,
So,
yeah.
yay.
Fantastic.
All right. Well, thank you everybody once again for watching us. Please continue to engage with us in our various communities. You can meet us at the Fan Run Discord. That's at tinycc/ACA Discord. We also have a fan run Facebook group. This is at facebook.com/groups/nonprofits live. You can also support us at Patreon if you're able at patreon.com/the nonprofits. And you can always help us with the algorithm. So like, comment, and subscribe. Leave us a comment here and we'll engage with you. Or you can email us at nonprofits@atheist-community.org. Yes, Small.
Amazon Smile. If
Yes.
you are a Amazon Prime subscriber, you can give a small amount of donation. Doesn't cost anything more to you. Give something to the ACA through Amazon Smile.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We'll see you next week.